What if you woke up tomorrow and found yourself in the middle of a lawsuit? Not because you did anything wrong, but just because you looked like an easy target. In today's world, just being financially visible can be your biggest liability. So let's dive in and figure out how to build a real financial fortress.
And this quote, this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. See, before a lawsuit ever gets serious, the first thing lawyers do is an asset search. They're asking one very simple question: are you collectible? And if the answer to that is yes, well, a tiny problem can explode into a multi-million-dollar nightmare, and it can happen fast.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to shatter the illusion that you might already be secure. Then, we'll look at the actual legal tools you can use to become invisible. After that, we'll build this fortress level by level. And finally, we're going to cover the one rule, the single most important rule you absolutely cannot afford to break.
Okay, let's start with the big problem. See, most people think, hey, I've got insurance, or I set up an LLC, I'm good. But modern litigation, it's not a fair fight anymore. It's a data-driven hunt for your money, and those old defenses are often just paper thin.
This is how the game has completely changed. Before a legal team even commits to suing you, they can use these incredibly sophisticated data tools, some people call it algorithmic discovery, to get a digital map of your entire net worth, and they can do it in seconds. They're basically pre-qualifying you to see if you're worth the effort.
And this is the result. What you think is this solid, impenetrable shield protecting you is actually, to them, completely transparent. Your assets, which you thought were safe and sound, suddenly become a big, blinking red dot on their radar screen. And just like that, you've become the most attractive person in the room to sue.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's a little scary, right? But now, let's talk about the solution. We're going to get into the legal architecture of invisibility, the fundamental building blocks you can use to actually protect your wealth. So this right here is the absolute key. You have to understand this separation. Real, lasting protection comes from legally detaching the control of your assets from the public ownership of them. The bottom line, you can still manage and use everything, but when someone looks you up in the public records, your name is nowhere to be found. Now, this might sound technical, but stick with me because this is one of the most powerful tools in the entire toolbox. A charging order means that a creditor can't just come in and take your LLC or grab its assets. The only thing they can get is a right to any money you decide to pay out. So what happens if you, the manager, just don't make any distributions? Well, the creditor gets absolutely nothing. They are just stuck. All right, let's get practical. How do you actually build this thing? Well, it's not a one-and-done deal. We're going to use this ladder analogy to show how you can add layers of security, taking you from completely exposed to basically untouchable.
And here are the 4 rungs on that ladder. Level 1 is where most people are, owning everything in your own name, total exposure. Level 2 is that basic privacy shield. Level 3 is where you start creating real legal friction for anyone coming after you. And level 4, well, that's the vault. That's maximum security.
And this, level 2, is probably the most common mistake people make. They go online, form a quick LLC, and think, I'm safe. But this paper shield is incredibly flimsy. If you mix personal and business funds, or you don't keep perfect records, a decent lawyer can pierce the corporate veil, and that shield just vanishes. This is such a critical distinction. Anonymity is like a curtain. Yeah, it's useful for hiding from a casual glance, but a serious opponent is just going to pull it right back. Real protection, on the other hand, is like a vault. It means that even if they find out you're behind it, there's legally nothing they can do to get what's inside. Hiding is not the same as securing. And here's a perfect example of why that distinction matters so much. See, not all anonymity is created equal. Take a look at New Mexico. It gives you privacy, no public owner info, great. But its charging order protection, it's weak. Now compare that to Wyoming, which gives you both the anonymity and the strong legal protection. That combination is what makes it a much better choice for actually protecting your investments.
And this brings us to the top, level 4. Here, we're building what you could call a jurisdictional maze. Imagine layering it up, an LLC from one state held inside a trust from another state. For a creditor, it turns into this multi-state, multi-year legal nightmare that is so expensive and so complicated that most of them will just throw in the towel.
So we've covered the what and the how, but now we have to talk about the when. Because there's one rule that underpins this entire strategy, and if you get this one wrong, everything we just talked about is completely worthless.
So let me ask you this. Let's say that car accident happened yesterday. You get a threatening letter from a lawyer today. Can you rush out right now and set up this fortress to protect yourself?
The answer is an absolute, unequivocal no. It is simply too late. Think of asset protection like fire insurance. You have to have the policy in place before your house catches on fire.
And here's the legal reason why. Moving your assets after a claim has come up is called a fraudulent transfer. You're seen as illegally trying to hide from a creditor you owe. You see, all these powerful strategies are perfectly legal, but only when they're done proactively. It's planning, not panic.
And trying to do this at the wrong time has some really severe consequences. A court won't just undo what you did. They can make you pay the other side's legal bills, you could lose key bankruptcy protections, and yeah, in some places, it can even lead to criminal charges. It's a line you just do not want to cross.
So let's be crystal clear about this. This isn't about tax evasion or trying to hide from your legitimate obligations. You're not becoming a ghost to the IRS. The goal is to use established legal structures to make yourself a dead end, a really unattractive, expensive target for frivolous lawsuits and predatory creditors. It's all about smart legal defense.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. As you look at your own financial situation, you've got to ask yourself this one question. Is everything you've worked so hard for just sitting behind a flimsy paper shield? Or have you taken the steps to truly secure it in a vault?
Have you ever
Because that
wondered how the
different-
ultra-wealthy seem almost untouchable when lawsuits come around? Well, it's not luck. Today, we're going way beyond the basic financial advice. We're diving into the advanced strategies they use to build a truly unbreachable financial fortress.
So, let's kick things off with a pretty fascinating puzzle, one that's really at the heart of this whole strategy. How do you take a valuable $5 million asset and, completely legally, make it look worthless to someone trying to sue you? It sounds like some kind of financial magic, right? But it's really a masterclass in legal architecture.
And the secret? It's a really powerful technique called equity stripping. Now, this has nothing to do with illegally hiding your assets. It's about fundamentally changing how they're seen by the outside world, transforming them from a juicy golden target into something a creditor just wouldn't bother with.
So, what is it exactly? Well, equity stripping is all about strategically placing liens, which are just documented debts, against an asset. And here's the brilliant part. It crushes the collectible equity. You haven't sold a thing, you still control it, you still get to enjoy it. But for anyone looking to sue you, there's just no meat left on the bone.
Let's walk through how it works. On the left, you see that $5 million property, a golden target for any lawyer. Then, a friendly, perfectly documented lien gets strategically applied. Maybe it's a loan from another company you control. And just like that, poof, the collectible equity plummets to zero. You've turned a target into a total dead end.
And look, this isn't some kind of obscure financial wizardry. It's done with well-established, everyday financial tools. You could use a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, which is a loan against your home's equity. You could use cross-collateralization, where one asset backs up another. Or you can use a properly documented friendly lien from a completely separate entity.
Okay, so we get how to protect a single asset. But how do you scale that thinking up to protect your entire portfolio? This is where we start building the fortress walls, using something called a cellular defense structure.
You know, the whole strategy really boils down to this one simple foundational piece of wisdom. If every single thing you own is held under your one name, then one problem, one lawsuit, can threaten everything you have. The solution, then, is compartmentalization. By putting different assets into their own separate, distinct legal entities, like a series of LLCs, you build legal firewalls. So a lawsuit over a slip and fall at one rental property, it's contained inside that one cell. It literally cannot spread and infect the rest of your portfolio.
And this comparison just lays it all out perfectly. On the left, you've got the single basket approach. It's high risk, total exposure, super fragile. But on the right, the cellular structure gives you isolated risk. A problem in one area is just that, a problem in one area. The rest of your fortress is totally secure.
When you combine that equity stripping technique with this cellular defense, you create something we call the architecture of a sovereign portfolio. It's a proactive, deliberate design for total financial resilience.
But look, any fortress is only as strong as the ground it's built on, right? And in the world of asset protection, that foundation is the law. It's absolutely crucial to build this structure correctly and, just as important, at the right time.
So let's be crystal clear on this point. What we're talking about here is not fraud. It's not illegal evasion. This is the strategic and legitimate use of established laws to secure your right to financial privacy and to manage your risk. It's about planning ahead, not hiding after the fact.
And this is where timing becomes everything. Take a look at this timeline. It's based on something called the Uniform Voidable Transactions Act. See, any moves you make before a claim pops up, that's here in the green zone, that's considered proactive legal planning. But if you start shifting assets around after a lawsuit is filed, here in the red zone, the courts are almost certainly going to see that as a fraudulent transfer, and they can just undo it.
This quote really says it all, doesn't it? You can't wait until you see the army charging over the horizon to start building your defenses. The plan has to be in place long before any claim ever comes up. True financial sovereignty is proactive, not reactive.
Okay, this brings us to the final, and maybe the most profound piece of the whole puzzle. It's a fundamental shift in your mindset. It's about completely rethinking the idea of ownership itself.
The first part of this powerful philosophy is to own nothing, at least not directly in your personal name. Think about it for a second. If your name is on the title of an asset, it's a public record. It makes you a visible, searchable, and therefore a very vulnerable target.
But here's the other half of that paradox, the really powerful part. While you own nothing directly, you structure your trusts and your entities so that you legally control everything. You get all the benefits and the use of the assets without any of the exposure that comes with direct ownership.
So when we put all these pieces together, the equity stripping, the cellular structure, the proactive legal timing, and that own nothing, control everything mindset, what does the final blueprint actually look like?
The goal is to build this incredible, multi-layered fortress, a structure of trusts and entities, all designed for one purpose, to protect your legacy. Each layer provides more privacy and more protection, keeping your family's future safe and secure right at the very center.
So this is the final question you really need to ask yourself. If a lawyer runs an asset search on your name, what do they find? Do they see a big list of properties and accounts, a clear, inviting target? Or do they find nothing, a complete dead end, an invisible fortress?
Because the key takeaway here is this. In a world where information is absolutely everywhere, making yourself an unattractive, invisible target is the most powerful defense you can have. The ultimate strength isn't just in what you own, it's in your strategic invisibility.